everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode. And every week, I have the privilege of interviewing the most amazing people. And I use those words all the time, but for the people that listen and tune into my show, they know that I bring them amazing talent. And I use the word amazing a lot because until I have a word that defines something on top of, I'm sticking with it. So I have my friend Coco here with us today. And again, just a true inspiration. I mean, for those of you that are watching versus listening, just smile and energy and just, you're just like one of those people. Like anytime we talk, I'm like, you're just one of those people. I don't know how else to say it. So tell us a little bit. First of all, start by introducing yourself and telling everybody who you are.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just want to say, Rhonda, birds of a feather flock together, right? So when you meet a sister from another mister, that's just kind of like the same vibe, the same positive energy, then it is so much pleasure to be. So thank you for inviting me to be here. So my name is Coco Larain Veira. I'm a speaker, trainer, and coach, very passionate about inspiring survivors to thrive by design, and I've been at it for about 30 years now as a speaker, and absolutely am passionate about, really spreading the message that we can transform our pain into power and mistakes into masterpieces and all that good stuff.
So, let's start with that because I have you for a good part of my show today. So, when we're speaking to people who are speakers and coaches, if somebody was to approach you today, and, I'll give you a great example. This morning, I had somebody call me. Now, I'm in the financial space.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, when I do my coaching, it's usually around businesses or entrepreneurs that are looking for elevation, structure, they're looking for that missing piece. They're maybe their accountability partner. So when
Mm.
somebody comes to you for coaching, how do you determine who's the right fit? And what questions do you ask so that together you can make that decision?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. For me, I have two very distinct streams, if you will, of clients that I work with. One is entrepreneurs, speakers, leaders, influencers who want to take their story and transform it into an inspirational message that's going to make a difference. So some of my coaching is really around taking sensitive stories, very that are inspirational, but have some trauma attached to it, and figuring out how can we tell that story on the stage and still have our integrity intact, still have our reputations on point, that kind of thing. So that kind of coaching, it's, the speaker, train the trainer kind of stuff. But on the other side, from a corporate standpoint, I talk about being a trauma informed leader, right? And so for individuals who are in a corporate space or in an entrepreneurial space, and they really want to make a difference with their brand or make a difference in the office or in the boardroom from a trauma informed perspective, that coaching is a little bit different because now we're talking about how to relate to people, how to create that culture of care, that's also trauma informed. So those are the two areas. And when I once I speak with someone who wants to be coached, we kind of have to just go into the weeds of their experiences and see what their mission is and see if it's a good fit.
I love the fact that you just ended with, is it a good fit? I meet people all the time that think they're impactful, but they don't know how to tell their story, or their story is really not as unique as they believe it because it was their own personal experience. So, how do you dig into the woods, right, and pull the
Mm-hmm.
weeds out and try to uncover that with a potential speaker?
Yeah. So, everyone has a story. Unfortunately, they're not
Some
unique.
aren't as
I wish,
interesting as
I-
others.
well, no, I wish they were unique, especially those of us who've gone through trauma. But, we see it in the movies, we've heard the story. However, it's your survival secrets that is meaningful. And so, yes, your story is relevant, but what did you do specifically to survive? What was the mindset you had? What was going on in that heart of yours? How did you build that resilience? What type of survival secret can you dig up inside the sandbox of your experiences and pull out those? Those are called gifts wrapped in sandpaper, right? It's how did you become successful? What mindset did you have when you faced that particular situation or circumstance that allowed you to find the success that you have today? That's what people need. And we want to make sure that the message is about the audience. It's really not about me anymore. Once I get up on the stage, it's about my audience, right? So, how can I serve them? What gems can I share with them that's going to help them to to thrive, to grow, to accomplish, to achieve? So that's what we look for, is those diamonds in the rough.
How long does it take for you? And I assume the answer is it's going to vary, but you and I know several mutual people. And when somebody wants to share their story and they want to make it about the audience, not themselves, they're no longer in what I refer to as the victim mentality, right? They've outgrown that and now they're there to share their message and their story. How long does it usually take to transform somebody so that their message is appropriately received?
um I guess you were right. It does vary. It depends on how open a person is to shifting the narrative, right? So if I meet a speaker and they're anxious and nervous about telling their story, and we have some things to kind of work our way through in terms of how to show up powerfully on a stage, then that transformation is going to take a little bit longer versus somebody who has been at it for a while. They're used to doing the corporate training thing. They're in front of the stage. They know how to tell, left, right, and center, but they also know they don't necessarily want to just throw anybody under the bus and open up a can of worms and then say goodbye on the stage. Those folks are very prone to the solutions that I offer, and it could be one or two sessions, and then they're off to the races because it's just a slight shift. So I guess it depends more upon the person's experience, their level of expertise in terms of how they are on this, how long they've been on the stage, um, and how they really feel about their story. Have they done the work? Everybody is healing is a journey, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a destination, it's the process. And so, but where are you on the journey that matters?
Do you find that age matters?
Cool. I'm here.
I just lost your volume. I'm like, hang tight. We don't hear you just yet. Now you're back.
Hold on.
Okay. We're
I'm
back.
back. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, great. Um, I started at the age of 17, my speaking career. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, of course. Mhm.
Great. I started at the age of 17, as a teenage mom, right? When I started my speaking career, my teacher asked me before I quit high school to share my story in a teenage pregnancy prevention program. I was pregnant and, you know, thought it was the worst time of my life. And yet I was faced with the opportunity of a lifetime to use my lived experience to inspire my peers. And so at that age, I was young. I had nothing to lose. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And 30 years later, I'm still at it. So age is not necessarily a factor, but perspective is. So if I were to go back 30 years to when that happened, or 32 years to when that happened, um, I'm giving my age away. Um, I wish I had a coach that could have helped me at that age to really hone in on my message. Right. Luckily for me, my most of my talks, if not all, were at a high school setting. So there was a lot of support in the room. There was a lot of openness. There was counselors. Guys. So even if I said something that was too traumatic, we had the support system to be able to help. Right. So it ages when you're younger, you can be a little bit more brave. And I think at that time I was, but less experience. So again, knowing who your audience is, knowing what space you're in is important, and hopefully having a coach that can kind of help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made back then.
I
And
understand.
I made some.
I understand that. Well, just for the sake of time, we do need to break really quick for a quick commercial. So hang tight. Don't go
Okay.
anywhere. We're going to be right back with Coco. And we are back, and I am so glad that you did not move that dial. We are speaking with Coco, my friend. She is such an inspiration, and we are talking about your speaking career and really your coaching and where you got started. So let's pick up from where we left off. Tell us a little bit about your personal growth story. So you started mentioning you were a young teenage mother.
Mhm.
So what was that like? Where did you grow up, and how did your community and your family come into play?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and to a single mom. My father was away in the Caribbean the majority of my childhood, so it wasn't easy. There was lots of different things that I had to deal with that most people would not want to admit to,
Mm.
but I don't shy away from having tough conversations. So there was poverty, there was a lot of abandonment issues that I had, and unfortunately, there was some individuals who were abusing me from quite a young age all the way through my childhood. So my mindset was influenced by a lot of that trauma. I mean, I just was messed up from the floor up. So by the time I got to high school and I started looking cute, and I was also wanting all the attention from the boys, it was also fueled by the pain of looking for love in all the wrong places and a skewed understanding of what sexuality was and who I was and my identity. It was all a hot mess. So luckily for me, I met a wonderful man who took care of me and the kids when I was young. Although we didn't last long because when you're young and you're married,
It's okay.
but that's a whole nother
I'm on my
podcast.
second marriage myself. It's okay.
Yeah, it is what it is. And we co-grandparent together pretty well right now. It's just really awesome. But yeah, it was tough. And when I got pregnant, my mom was very supportive. My dad was completely terrified. He did the whole tough love thing, which didn't work. He said, "If you have that kid, I'm not your dad anymore." And it was pretty traumatic to be kicked off the choir and talked about and all the rumors. But at the same time, here I was, a statistic and a quote unquote failure, but then I became a speaker and had this opportunity. And I feel like I was an oxymoron, right? And the paradox effect, you've heard of
Yeah.
that, where it's like the outcome doesn't match
Well,
with the circumstance.
you did something to share your experience. And
Yeah.
because you didn't wait 10 years or 20 years, you did it in the moment.
Yeah.
You were able to say, "Look at me," and ask away, right? Like a lot
Yeah.
of times
Yeah.
what happens is that you are with what I refer to as of like kind. So if you are pregnant in high school and within I'll say a short stint, right? You can go and share your experiences. And if there's something that you can share that will help impact the decision making for another young female,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You were placed in that position, and
Yeah.
I love that. So you're pregnant, you're in high school. Do you finish school?
No, I didn't finish high school. I did go off to college after as a mature student. But my speaking career took off. I absolutely loved sharing my story, and the school board hired me, and I became the spokesperson. But then I thought maybe I should get a real job, you know what I'm saying, and get some benefits. So I went back to school, studied computers, tried to do be a secretary. I just, nothing was fitting,
Yeah.
and so about 3 years after that, I said, well, maybe I need to be self-employed because I just don't like the whole 9 to 5 thing. And what would I do? And I went back to speaking, and I've been at it ever since. So it's been a pure joy.
Now, what lessons did you learn from the beginning of your speaking career that you still use today?
Mistakes are masterpieces in the making when you learn the lesson and share it with someone else.
I love
Yeah.
I love that.
Not that my having my children was a mistake, because they are the greatest blessing on the planet. but so-called mistakes that people, they label you. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, it was the most wonderful experience to be able to use my lived experience and share my story. Now, I would advise people to wait if they can, because, money is a factor and relationship and all that, of course, right? The healthiest person and version of yourself you can be is better when you're parenting. Um, but, it's really, there are no mistakes. They're just masterpieces in the making.
I love that. I had my kid my first I had at 23.
Yeah.
So
Same
I
here.
was still, considered a young
Yep.
mother,
Yep.
and because even at 23, I looked 12, it was, it was one of those things where, "Oh, honey," probably like what you would get. "Oh," and you get the eyeballs and the people looking at you and
Yep.
say, "I'm of mature age."
Yep.
I wouldn't even know how to respond, and when people would say, like, right now, "Look, I have 5 kids," and people will say to me all the time, "You're crazy. What were you thinking?" And I say, like, what I was thinking is that I didn't care what you thought. I did what was good for me and my family, and you're not part of that. So I think
Yeah.
mindset wise too, when you stop thinking and caring so much about what other people think, you're able to think clearly for yourself, right? Which
Absolutely.
is important. When you are talking to somebody about scripting, their story, how hard is it for you to get their pain points out?
You know what? I have a bit of a system, right, that I put in place. So we talk about, you know, this a step-by-step process that helps people get it out, right? Um, and we look for those gems. So I spend a lot of time listening, allowing them to just share everything, and then we take little Cole's notes and we make sure that well, what resonates with you the most, and so it's a beautiful process. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than others, but we get to the bottom of it, especially knowing that the focus is once you have a focus about what you want to say and why you want to say it and who you want to say it to, right? And what the outcomes are going to be. That I call them value propositions for your audience. Once
Yeah.
they tell that story from that vantage point, then it starts to flow like water.
There are so many people that you and I meet along the way that want to be speakers, but it doesn't mean they are a speaker,
Mm,
right? So there are so many people, they have great stories. They don't know how to express themselves to an audience so that they could really capture, right,
mm,
the essence of what that message is. And I
mhm.
know that that's a part of training that you do,
Yeah,
as well, is to kind of teach that emotion
yeah.
and how to resonate and connect with the audience. But also what I've noticed is that right now I'm noticing so many speakers, they're getting on stage and they're crushing it, but they don't have what I refer to as a value proposition at the end of the day. Do you
Mm.
talk to the people that you work with about having some sort of a deliverable or people who write books or have podcasts and like what comes next?
Yeah. Well, I always say as a speaker, you want to have several streams of income, right? You can't just rely on the speaking, um, speaking on stage to make the money that you need to make, especially because there's different ways to get on the stage, right? You pay to play, or you create your own stage, or someone hires you to be on their stage. So it's about having back of the room sales, right? So your book, your coaching course, I believe if you have a powerful enough story and you have some gems that you can share, then you can have a coaching program, you can have an online course, you can have a book and a devotional and things like that. Group coaching is great as well, creating a community. So it's very important for individuals to know that they can take their story and their book and turn it into an entire business, right? The business of speaking is not the same as speaking.
You hit that so on the head. And I absolutely want to touch on that and deep dive a little bit more, especially for our audience and our listeners. Again, we work with so many speakers, and I think that these are words that they need to hear. So, with that said, we are going to break for a quick commercial, but don't go anywhere because Coco's she's dropping nuggets. She's dropping nuggets, the behind the scenes of what happens when you want to be a speaker and you are trying to establish and figure out your platform. So don't go anywhere. We're breaking for a quick commercial. And we are back. Coco, we are picking your brain. You opened up Pandora's box about being a speaker. I speak, but you just hit it on the head. You have people pay to play. Let's start right there. I'm a speaker. I come to you. I say to you, Coco, I am awesome and I want to speak and I want to do this and sign me up, coach. How do you, I want to work with you. And now you have to lay out the reality of
Mhm.
what that looks like. So let's start with just because I think I'm awesome doesn't
Right.
mean that everybody else does. And now we have to gain exposure on what we call pay to play stages. Explain a little bit about what that means. And also, not only what it means, like what it may cost,
Yeah,
what is expected of the speaker, because it's sort of, you're joining into a whole new society.
that's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
And you're investing in yourself as well at that point.
Yeah, that's it. And we think about, the hard costs, right? Putting on an event, right? They've got the venue. You've got all these different things that the individuals that are actually hosting the event have to consider. And when you pay to play, you are sharing in that cost in some cases. Sometimes because you are associated with um, popular professional speakers, then just being on a stage with them allows your reputation to lift up a little bit,
They
right?
get instant
So you're
credibility.
yeah, so there's that credibility piece, and nothing's free, unfortunately, right? So if one person is s- taking the time to spend their money on the top-notch marketing for this event, and they're drawing the crowd and, putting people in seats, right? There's a cost involved for
Yeah.
that, right? And so as a speaker, if you want to be on that stage, then you share in that cost, but you also share in the profit because depending on the stage, there'll be some very powerful people in the audience who are looking for a real solution that the speakers have to give. And you will profit if you have the right kind of program and you know how to share what your program is to the audience by connecting with them, understanding who they are. So I would caution any speaker who decides to go for the pay to play, make sure that the audience is the right audience for your work, right? I'm not going to necessarily pay to play on a stage where it's a bunch of individuals who are powerhouses working in the steel mill. They're not going to buy my book,
Right.
right?
Well, we talk about that because there's so many different types of stage events, right? I come from the world of, business and entrepreneurs, but I also resonate in the world of real estate investing. So
Right.
when you are talking to, look, we have our mutual friend, James Dixon. James Dixon's messaging could be motivational for a person who is looking to invest in real estate, but it may not be necessarily the best platform for him as a speaker because people who are attending that event are looking to soak up the information from potential mentors that have been there, done that in that particular space.
Right, right. And on the other hand, though, as a speaker, if you are a great speaker, you can customize your message for the audience. So if I were invited into that kind of an event, I would say, well, what do they need to hear?
Yeah.
What are the pain points? How can I add value in light of what they're going through? Because real estate agents are people too. So, right. And so how do I add value? Is there something that I can provide? For example, I talk a lot about trauma, right? Well, how does that relate to real estate? Well, keeping yourself safe when you are, for example, a female, real estate agent going from house to house by yourself at night with people in like there's potential for some
We'll
nefarious
say
things
we'll
that
say
could happen,
misconduct.
right? And so, really how to keep yourself safe and how to, be supportive of each other and create this network of, there's possibilities, but that's still a bit of a reach. It's
Mhm.
still a bit of a reach. So I think it's important for any speaker to do their homework, because the last thing you want to do is pay to play on a stage and then you walk away and you've lost. Not that there's never really a loss, because experience is great, networking is great. You never know who you're going to meet, but I think it's important to be choosy.
Now, when somebody comes to you and they are interested in learning, again, about becoming a speaker, so we now cover the pay to play. How, I should say, infrequent is it that you find somebody and you can just launch? Right? You have those unicorns that are out there that just have this powerful message. But the reality is that I think a lot of times when I speak to speakers, they go, I want to go on stage and I'm going to make money and I'm going to sell from stage and I'm going to do this. And, they don't recognize the pay to play as one thing. But then sometimes, again, we have these unicorns. Have you worked with any unicorns lately where it was just so easy to book them? Because I think people don't know how to get booked.
Yeah, it's a rare gem, right? I focus, see, because my coaching is so very particular, working with survivors primarily. So I focus on helping them build their own stage and creating their own tribe, right? And using their own platform versus paying to play. It really just depends. I don't necessarily coach every speaker. I coach speakers who have a very traumatic story and they want to learn how to tell it in a way that is safe and empowering. And so not every speaker who has that kind of story is going to be invited to the pay to play stage, because those pay to play stages are usually more motivational or they're business oriented or what have you, right? Unless they're going to go into the trauma informed leadership, that type thing that which I talk about. So I would say I found lots of superstars, but the challenge again with my topic and my area of focus is they may not be invited to those stages. So create your own stage. That's the way that I see it.
I love it. I love that. Now, you did say something about creating your own stage. What is your recommendation of how somebody would build their own platform?
Hmm. Well, podcast is a good way to start. YouTube channel. Um, Start to share your story online, and then when you start to develop a tribe, you start to have a group. You start to do things online with people. Um, and it's not the join me for 5 days and this so and so and such and such, and we're going to teach you how to A, B, and C, and it's a bunch of fluff and they're trying to sell a program. It's not that. I mean, real, genuine community spaces where people are gathering for real impact. And so, virtual is easier. It's not as it's cost friendly. It's not going to cost you. And then you move towards having a live in person event. Um, Very small boutique events,
Mhm.
right? I remember one of my first events I had was at a tea room in Atlanta, Georgia, um, and and it was beautiful, and I didn't charge for it, and I invited key people in, and as I started to build my community and my network of folks, right? And you just one step by step by step by step, um, and then people were chomping at the bits to get into my coaching program because I was able to do transformational work right there on the stage.
I love that. You created an intimate environment where it was a safe space. If you had 500 people there, it may not have been the same intimate environment. So therefore, you wouldn't have gotten, right, the same result from the people that would have shown up. You know,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. So just for the sake of time, we do need to break one
Hmm.
more time, but don't go anywhere. I'm hoping we can grab you for about another 10 minutes. I want to really talk to you about women's empowerment and what that means to you in 2024. So with that said, once again, we are with my friend Coco, and don't go anywhere because we are going to wrap up today's session, and hopefully you're just as inspired as we are. So hang tight. We'll be right back.